You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. I hope that you got a little bit of rest over the weekend. We didn't, because the news from Saturday was incredible. Now, I'm going to make a couple of rough decisions right off the bat here and give you the breaking news. Donald Trump, President of the United States, has announced, quote, "Congratulations to everyone." He says it has been fully agreed on by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions, by which he means Israel, for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to what Trump is coining the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful. On the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, and God bless the United States of America and the world. President Trump, United States of America. All right, so starting right off the bat with some big, serious news. Now, this actually broke while Vice President J.D. Vance was on air over on Fox News. And wouldn't you know, we have the clip ready to go.
Seconds ago, the president went to Truth Social and typed this: "It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire." Complete and total ceasefire is what he typed.
Yep.
What does that mean? How did it come about? What's the development here?
Well, we were actually working on that just as I left the White House to come over here. So that's good news that the president was able to get that across the finish line. I think what it means, Brett, is quite simple. First of all, the president, without, knock on wood, having a single American casualty, obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. We are now in a place where we weren't a week ago. A week ago, Iran was very close to having a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran is incapable of building a nuclear weapon with the equipment they have because we destroyed it. So that's a very, very big thing. Now, what that means, I think, is we have to talk to Iran and, of course, to Israel about what the future holds. Because while we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program, our hope and our expectation is that they're not going to try to rebuild that program. And I think that's what the president is really trying to figure out here.
All right, so when we were last with you, the United States had just begun striking Iran, or really should I say, President Trump had just announced the conclusion of the United States strikes on Iran. We had the wonderful privilege of breaking that live with you guys, and now, a couple of days later, we have a little bit more to give you. So, in total, let's talk about Operation Midnight Hammer. Right away, we talk a little bit about this diversion. Now, I've talked about this on the air a couple of times. This is something that, while some of my colleagues thought was chaos, I thought looked a little bit too measured and planned to be as random as it appeared. This was that the Trump administration has been fighting uphill, as has every administration for the last 15 to 20 years, on all of these high-profile leaks to the media, in which the President of the United States would make some kind of a decision with some top-level staff, cabinet officials, or advisors on what to do with United States foreign policy. And then the individuals inside the executive agencies would leak that to the media. And they would send all of this out so that the Washington Post or the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or Reuters, or Axios, etc., would break the information before any kind of activity could be carried out. And that's a very dangerous thing, because if it's a military operation, it can either warn your opponents that you're coming and give them time to scatter, or it can put American troops at risk of going into an area if it's a very personal, up-close operation. In case of the Air Force, maybe give troops on the other side time to activate air defenses. And so the Trump administration combated that in the beginning of this 12-day war by leaking a bunch of different versions of all kinds of stories in and out to members of the administration, who then promptly did what they've done before, leaked things to the press. And so you would have a CNN article that would come out that says Trump's not going to strike Iran, and then a Wall Street Journal article that says he's going to strike in 2 weeks, and then a New York Times article that says, well, Trump's actually doing backdoor negotiations with Israel, and then another article would come out from Axios, and it would say, well, the Trump administration is really just trying to hold back Netanyahu. We're not really sure. So that all said, when you get into the diversion tactics, it all wraps up with one of the most amazing bits of subterfuge from the Department of Defense to not just the American populace and media, but to the world who would have very much liked to have known this ahead of time. This would be when Fox News had reported essentially that the two B-2 bombers had flown from the Californian land over to Guam via Hawaii. So essentially, Fox News was saying there are currently a couple of bombers that are moving to refuel at Hawaii and then move up to Guam. This was on Saturday, the 21st. And everyone expected that Donald Trump was going to take a little bit of time in this 2 weeks. Maybe some action was coming eventually. We didn't quite know. And then Reuters reported during a recent call on Saturday that Vice President J.D. Vance had pushed back, saying the U.S. shouldn't be getting directly involved and the Israelis might try to drag everyone into a big, huge war. And Secretary Pete Hegseth participated in the call and said kind of the same things. And Reuters said they couldn't determine who else took part in the call because the source wasn't that good. And so finally, after the series of diversion tactics, by the way, you should have had a little red flag go up in your noggin when Pete Hegseth was also saying that Iran and Israel and the United States should not all get involved in the same room together, because that's not usually Hegseth's stance. And then we received the word, of course, the statement that you know very well, that President Trump had announced later that the United States had gone forward with its major strike on Iran. And that Trump had released this Truth Social post that we covered live on the air, that Natanz and Fordo and Esfahan had been hit. And then he tells everyone, thank you for your attention to this matter. And then everything promptly turned right upside down. So we actually do have some of the footage that's now been released. For example, the B-2 bomber getting ready to participate in what we now know is Operation Midnight Hammer. This flew from Missouri 37 hours over to Iran and dropped its major bunker busters, 6 of them, on Fordo through the vents, actually through the ventilation systems. Now, there's a lot of really cool photos from the White House Situation Room, and of course, there's one verified piece of footage from the explosion actually occurring at Fordo, where they dropped the bunker busters down the ventilation systems, a lot like Star Wars, The New Hope. So I really could not help cutting something together, just for you guys. So let's see if we can get that ready to roll.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
So, an incredible military operation. It has probably one of the best operational security ratings or assessments, you might say, in modern history. There were absolutely no leaks ahead of time. Now, there has been speculation, and there have been a couple of spurious reports that Iran had supposedly taken some of the uranium out of Fordo, and so therefore the United States really didn't have that much success. No. And here's why. If they had kept the uranium inside and the reports, which are very spurious, are false, okay, well then, one might expect that is now very much gone. Number two, on the flip side, if Iran had moved the enriched uranium out of Fordo, all of the equipment that was needed to enrich uranium is still inside Fordo, now a smoldering, blubbering mass. And that uranium is now no longer under 100 feet of rock and reinforced concrete. Iran doesn't have a bunch of Fordo mountain installations everywhere. This isn't a James Bond movie. It is now in a place where, theoretically, this could be intercepted and picked up. But to talk a little bit more about this, the statements, and then, of course, more information on the Ceasefire radio crew, we're going to send you very briefly over to commercial. We'll stay on with the live stream crew. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, this is where things get really interesting because the president of the United States said he was going to get out and make a statement to the entire country. Reminder, the last time that a president made an evening statement, it was Joe Biden getting in front of the country in the evening to defend his own mental deterioration claims made by Robert Hur in that classified documents investigation. And Biden got in front of the country, essentially crapped himself, forgot absolutely everything, and then went, and then an aide tried to get Biden down from the podium, and Biden's like, and then continued attacking, essentially, the press and Robert Hur. It was the beginning of the end for Biden's presidential re-election campaign, which already wasn't going too swimmingly. Now, the presidential walkout and the beginning of the statement on this Iranian moment is easily a make or break for the president. How the president responds to this Iranian strike, not from Truth Social, not from press statements, but in front of the entire country, is in fact going to define the rest of his first year in foreign policy for the administration. It matters crucially, and what the president steps forward to do is incredible.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out...
No, that's all wrong. That's all wrong. You don't understand. If you're listening to the show, if you're watching this, the camera didn't just open up and it's Trump standing there and it's talking. No. From a back hallway, emerging from a side door, walked President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State and Acting National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, and then Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. And it was one of the greatest American moments of all time for just presidents on camera. So we actually cut this one up a little bit with music as well. Here you go.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Incredible. Incredible. There is no other way to describe that than incredible. Now, in the following days, what we got was a series of statements. Of course, we had Secretary of Defense Hegseth making one of the most, with Chief of Staff General Kane, an incredible, again, a really incredible overview of this operation. And of course, those who took up not only flying the B-2s, but also who launched missiles directly from U.S. submarines in the region.
Of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. And I think Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America in Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future.
Now, the funny thing, at least for those of us on the political side of the spectrum, are rolling over is the immediate media response to this. So, for example, from the New York Times, there was this whining that followed from John Ismay over at NYT. In the briefing, Hegseth referred to B-2 pilots as our boys in those bombers. Yet both men and women have been trained to fly them. Man, I can't fathom why no one takes outlets like the New York Times seriously anymore. He said boys. Correction. In fact, those are the men, the fighting men of the United States Air Force that did that. Cope and seethe, I'm sorry, but the DEI administration lost in November. And as a result, again, now we're looking at a ceasefire deal between Israel and Iran, with Iranian nuclear program almost completely decimated. All of their nuclear top scientists dead, their general staff dead, the Ayatollah literally hiding in a cave. So at this point, by the way, Iran's a lot less mountainous than Afghanistan, not a lot of caves to hide in. So as far as the current situation on the ground, it is more than enough to watch this incredible operation. But alas, we got to talk about some more of the reaction because it's very sweet. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Now, perhaps you're a young man out there in the beautiful wide beyond who responded to this information like a lot of Americans did. No Americans were killed. We performed an amazing military operation. Some really great things to see. This is a lot better than certainly some of the things that the Obama administration has done, the Biden administration has done. In fact, the polling shows that Americans are overwhelmingly in support of these actions, especially Republicans, by the way. And we'll talk about the supposed MAGA split that pretty much only exists online, with only like 19% of Republicans being against these particular strikes. Now, the pearl clutching came in hot and heavy, and it came in from people like Pelosi and Nadler and a bunch of other goofballs who haven't read the Constitution whatsoever, suggesting that the president needs to alert Congress before he does anything ever. Like before Trump wipes, he has to let Pelosi know. This is the position that Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, attempted to hit on, and it just landed real flat.
Donald Trump and his actions, which do not appear to be consistent with the United States Constitution, takes unilateral offensive military action without seeking the approval of the United States Congress.
Okay, so just a cool hip moment here, just a little you and me kind of a come to Jesus conversation. Hakeem Jeffries' inability to complete a sentence without Obama-level pauses is perhaps one of the most annoying things about this member of Congress. If you don't know what you are going to say, at least give us the common courtesy to just read off your notes. But his accusation that the Constitution of the United States forbids a president from issuing some kind of a military strike is just not true, especially when you consider the War Powers Act gives the president 48 hours to alert Congress. And, for that matter, the president of the United States did, in fact, ask Secretary Hegseth to reach out and talk to both Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Only here's the thing, though Hakeem Jeffries is like, nobody called me, nobody let me know. Carolyn Leavitt later confirmed they did, in fact, try to call Hakeem Jeffries. Kid just didn't pick up.
We did make bipartisan calls. Thomas Massie and the Democrats, he should be a Democrat because he's more aligned with them than with the Republican Party. We're given notice. The White House made calls to congressional leadership. They were bipartisan calls. In fact, Hakeem Jeffries couldn't be reached. We tried him before the strike and he didn't pick up the phone. But
oh, what a real shame. So the Democrats in the Congress are just absolutely beside themselves. Now, there are a few Republican members who are also acting, what's the right word here? Explicitly retarded. We'll talk about them later in the show because it's just really not worth. Again, according to the polls, it's a very, very small minority of Republicans. So let's talk about the retaliation, because I was promised and you were promised World War III, forever war, electric boogaloo. That's what we were told. We were promised that this would be the end of everything and that Iran was going to retaliate with thousands of missiles and it was going to bankrupt the U.S. economy. Yes, those were exact claims, not being hyperbolic. I was told Iran would rain down missiles like the Persians shot arrows at the Spartans. Oh, the Persians. Hey, little nice. And then the United States was going to be bankrupt. We were going to have no oil. It was going to be $536 a barrel. And we were all going to be riding pogo sticks back and forth to work and carrying umbrellas for the missiles. And we were going to be bankrupt and dead and terrible. And it was going to be a forever war because, after all, the only two wars anyone knows, or the only two actions anyone knows, is either World War II or the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Like, those are the only two. No other type of analysis allowed. You can't say, wow, this is really a lot more like a Gulf War kind of situation, or perhaps the Soleimani strike in the first administration. No, none of that. Full-on panic sets in. And then, nothing happened. There was no Russian outrage. You had very briefly Putin say, I do not like this nonsense in the Middle East. And Iran is like, please help us, please help us. And Russia responded, we might help you diplomatically, but we're not going to help you with any supplies or aid or anything like that. So that's ally number one, gone. Then China thought, we're going to get some aid from China. And China said, no, I believe is the Mandarin translation there. North Korea said, we are against this, but we're a little busy starving our people. So as for this huge alliance that was going to rush in, what about the Middle Eastern countries? Syria? No, they helped Israel actually take down some of the projectiles thrown from Iran, as did Saudi Arabia, as did Jordan. So what about Qatar? Because Qatar sends a lot of money towards Iranian proxy terror groups. Qatar alerted the United States well in advance of an Iranian 6-missile, which is just pathetic. Again, the very first night after Israel struck Iran, they fired 300 ballistic missiles. Iran fired 6 ballistic missiles towards a U.S. airbase in Qatar. That's it. 6. And they killed no one. So, absolutely not. Now, the Russian Foreign Minister Dmitry Medvedev, whose hobbies include huffing paint, initially decided to get out in front of the world and suggest, well, maybe Russia or somebody out there, maybe they start, sending a couple of nukes. He says, what have the Americans accomplished with their nighttime strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran? Critical infrastructure of the nuclear fuel cycle appears to have been unaffected or sustained only minor damage. That's already been proven false. So then he says at the bottom, a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. And a bunch of the fear-mongering immediately went, see, nuclear war is on the horizon. And it turns out Trump didn't like that. Which given, the swinging a big stick, peace through strength style that Trump has effectuated already, probably not a good idea. So Trump immediately takes to Truth Social, and his description of the word nuclear as the N-word had me laughing until I was doubled over. From the president, quote, did I hear former President Medvedev from Russia casually throwing around the N-word, nuclear, and saying that he and other countries would supply nuclear warheads to Iran? Did he really say that, or is it just a figment of my imagination? If he did say that, and if confirmed, please let me know immediately. And then Trump says the N-word should not be treated so casually. Oh man, this is so funny. He says, I guess that's why Putin's the boss. And then Trump proceeds to illustrate that the United States, if it wasn't clear by the submarine strikes at Iran, the U.S. in fact does have some subs in the region. And it takes approximately 3.6 seconds, the typical Ferrari 0 to 60 speed, for Medvedev to immediately backtrack. He's like, whoa. Regarding President Trump's concerns, I condemn the U.S. strike in Iran. It failed to achieve its objectives. However, Russia has no intention of supplying nuclear weapons to Iran because, unlike Israel, we're parties to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which, by the way, makes no sense at all. Because Israel has not given nuclear arms to anyone else. I'm looking for that instance. So essentially, Medvedev immediately was like, oh no, we're not helping Iran with anything at all. Pakistan, the other Islamic nuclear power, what did they do? They nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize for brokering peace between Pakistan and India. So now we have this incredible ceasefire brokered by the President of the United States that is to go in effect in around 6 hours, about 5 hours now. Incredible. Radio crew, we got to send you over to commercial. We'll be over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right. This is really just for you guys. The beautiful reactions from around the world, from, for example, Germany's leader, Australia's foreign minister. You have praise coming in from around the world. Even nations that are trying to tut this, like Saudi Arabia, are overjoyed. This is a masterstroke by the President of the United States. You really don't need me to tell you that, but this is exactly what I voted for. This is what I voted for. And for all of the individuals who pinky promised that Donald Trump was going to drag us into all of these forever World War III shenanigans, yet again, here we have the Middle Eastern policy of the President of the United States. One of his most publicly facing policies, by the way, being excellent. We'll talk about that with Kurt Schlichter in just a minute. First, we have to get to some more breaking news coming out of the Supreme Court of the United States. So, the Supreme Court ruled today 6-3 with You guessed it, Sotomayor and Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson dissenting. The Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration can restart swift removals of illegal aliens to countries other than their homelands, lifting a court order requiring that they get a chance to challenge the deportations. So, I will remind you that this whole Kilmar Abrego Garcia nonsense led to a series of lawsuits in which a bunch of people claimed that you couldn't just take illegal immigrants and just throw them out of the country. You have to give them a cup of hot chocolate and let them calmly explain why, they promise they're not a member of MS-13. Those tattoos are just, a really bad night at a college party in El Salvador. And it turns out that no, the Supreme Court is siding with Trump on this. I was also told the Supreme Court wasn't going to stand for this kind of stuff. That hasn't stopped these left-wing activist judges from going all in, however. We reported on Friday that Mahmoud Khalil, the pro-Hamas protester in Columbia University, he's not a student of Columbia. He essentially is over here just to cause trouble and incite violence. A judge ruled that he could not be detained right now. The Department of Homeland Security has decided, though they have made it clear they don't recognize the judge's authority, they are temporarily releasing the individual and filing an appeal. Now, what does this mean? Because it sounds like they're backing down. By allowing this to play out through the appeals process, the Department of Homeland Security can essentially get a more foundational precedent that will knock out a couple of other current cases regarding the deporting and the visa canceling of individuals who are in this country, like, for example, a lot of Chinese nationals. So essentially, they're doing a little bit of bowling here. But regardless, if there is one congresswoman who is excited to make sure that the pro-Hamas insurrection insider is brought out, it's Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, of course, made it a point to escort this goofball through the airport like she was showcasing something on The Price is Right. He's got his keffiyeh on. Amazing. Very, 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 very love it. I mean, this is just a real hoot. I can't not stress enough how thrilled I am to watch the Democrats going all in, not only on the pro-Hamas stuff, but they're also going to go in on the pro-communist stuff, because of course they are. So we're going to head over to bring the radio crew back in. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
The Democrats can't help themselves. They can't. A magistrate judge has now ordered a bail hearing for Kilmar Abrego Garcia that will be held on Wednesday, June 25th. So essentially, the Department of Homeland Security bringing Kilmar Abrego Garcia, you remember the Maryland man who, beat his wife and human trafficked and also put his some other guy's kids at risk, has the MS-13 tattoos on the knuckles, a real swell character, which is why Senator Chris Van Hollen spent, way more time going down to El Salvador for Margs instead of, working for American citizens. Well, Kilmar has been brought back into the United States because the federal government desired to try him on human trafficking charges, as well as a couple of other really disturbing and gross various other crimes that, in fact, if tried not just in federal court but in Tennessee, could result in the death penalty for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, which, if he is guilty of some of the crimes he is accused, and there are documentation of, yes, he should absolutely face the death penalty. Human trafficking, especially with children, regarding child exploitation, should be punishable by death. You exploit a child, I'm sorry, it's the rope. Just no apologies there whatsoever. Also, wife beaters, high up on that list, in line for that as well. So, a federal magistrate judge essentially tried to say that once Kilmar was back in the United States, that you just kind of had to let him go. That the U.S. had no authority to hold him on human trafficking charges, because the Biden administration had told the Tennessee Highway Authority to let Kilmar go back when they originally suspected, and by the way, have video of Kilmar Abrego Garcia participating in human trafficking. And they had to let him go because the Biden administration, if they loved two things, it was Percocet and illegal immigrants, which has not gone over very well at all for the Democrats. But that brings us over to their last true love, which is just open communists. Open, flagrant communists. So Mandani is this goofball of a New York City Democrat mayoral candidate who in tomorrow's election, according to Polymarket, which again, I don't particularly trust Polymarket on its trending kind of betting poll stuff, but some of the producers do, so I'll give them their due here. Mandani has in fact passed Cuomo as the leading contender to win the New York City mayoral primary. Now, we've talked a little bit about who Mandani is before. He is an open, passionate communist. And again, I'm not making up any jokes. Here's Mandani openly calling for city and state-run grocery stores. You know, Soviet Union grocery stores.
Grocery prices are out of control. The cost of eggs and milk has skyrocketed. Some stores are even using dynamic pricing, jacking up the cost over the course of a day depending on what they can get away with. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm Zahan Mandani, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores.
Oh, so you're not just going to open up city stores, you're going to redistribute the money from stores who actually know what they're doing to city-run grocery stores. Oh.
Whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
Oh, okay. So what we're going to do is provide no incentive to any kind of a profit. The only motive of business growth, period. The Soviet Union tried this very, very, very hard. And when it failed, it was actually China. By the way, one of the leading causes of the Sino-Soviet split was China essentially, via Mao, sitting back and pointing at Soviet Russia and laughing because they were more passionate about what they defined as communism than the actual results that were killing Soviet citizens en masse. So, dude's an openly avowed communist, and like Jasmine Crockett, our favorite Democrat in the House, this guy has multiple different accents that he trots out depending on the audience that he's in front of.
Because I think that New Yorkers, more than they hate a politician they disagree with, they hate a politician they can't trust.
On the subject of trust, you've adopted different speaking accents in different scenarios.
But they go to their local bodega.
Is there one that's real and one that's affected?
What I would say is, as any immigrant knows, having been born in Kampala, Uganda, and then raised in South Africa and moving here when I'm 7 years old, is there are different parts of my life. Worldwide tour is a worldwide tour is a worldwide tour.
Mandani was talking about a worldwide press tour back when he was a rapper.
Yes. Nothing says I'm qualified to run New York City like I'm a rapper. Well, I guess AOC was a barista, so fair.
Bring the flavor to the fish, bring the flavor to the rice.
In a Disney movie directed by his mother.
A Disney movie? Oh, so like a lot of Marxists, he's from the lap of luxury, of course. He's leading Cuomo, by the way, because, you know, Cuomo's an old perv who killed a bunch of grandparents. So, New York Democrats, baby. The other guy, Lander, or whatever his name is, he was too busy throwing his body weight into federal agents and clinging to illegal immigrants like Representative McIver doing the Kool-Aid man. Oh, yeah. So again, Democrats burning themselves down. For all of this conversation that I have heard from some of the isolationist crew that says, oh, this just cost Trump the midterms. The Israel-Iran thing, it cost Trump the midterms. Have you seen who Republicans are facing in the midterms? Have you seen it? Because, my dude, it ain't looking any better. You know what? Allow me to give you a little bit of perspective. There is only one Democrat, only one, on the national stage that does not have their head crammed into one of their various orifices. And this, believe it or not, though he votes terribly, is in fact Senator John Federman from Pennsylvania, the only Democrat who recognizes maybe the normal people who were 90s labor, kind of pro-union industrial Democrats, should not have been flipped off by the Democrat Party. He's still trying to appeal to them. That includes on foreign policy. So Federman criticizing AOC openly now because, you know, it turns out people don't want an Iran-sympathizing communist, just, you know, kind of a crazy idea.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says the president shouldn't be impeached because he's impulsive. What do you think of that?
But no, I mean, of course, no. She knows it. I know it. We all know it. That's not going anywhere. And, you know, he's been impeached twice, and now he's still our president as well now, too. So it's not going anywhere, and I don't think that's helpful. And I think if you throw that term around, that actually diminishes what the severity of what impeachment is really reserved for.
Hey, what a surprise. It's like calling someone a Nazi over and over and over again. Means jack squat. Incredible. Again, the rest of the left is going to continue down this deep, dark road. The DNC is in complete chaos. It's broke. We've, of course, talked about this. And now, despite Iran and the Washington Post and the various professors of Islam around the United States excited for all of these Iranian strikes on U.S. bases, they threw 6 ballistic missiles at a pre-evacuated U.S. base in Qatar that killed none. 0. Zip. Zilch. So the Iranian administration has chickened out. And by the way, they've already said that's essentially the end of their retaliation. They said, yes, now that we've punished the aggressor, we're going to pursue a ceasefire. Oh, you mean now that you did nothing? Their symbolic strike. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Every single time they make some big, bold prediction, it ends up falling in their faces. Now, I do have another example of this on the illegal immigration side of things. Remember good old Senator Alex Padilla from California? The guy who rushed Secretary Noem without his security badge on and then was tackled and has essentially then been crying ever since? Well, he has now gotten very angry about something else entirely. So apparently there was this dude who was an illegal immigrant who U.S. Border Patrol arrested. And he's claiming, like KTLA 5 claimed, that, the Border Patrol is violently beating and detaining this Santa Ana father. Oh, he's just a father. Now, perhaps a light went off in your head. Whenever the media describes someone as a father, I bet you can guess where this is going. If you guessed illegal immigrant who attacked Border Patrol with a weed whacker, you'd be correct. So here's this lovely, sweet, wonderful California father. Again, you can't see it over on the audio side. We don't have audio of this, I'm guessing, because there's probably more. Oh, there's the weed whacker. Beautiful. So he's resisting, and they're essentially telling him very kindly, stop. So, if you run at somebody with a rotating blade device, whether it's a weed whacker or a chainsaw or perhaps knives that you've attached to a Roomba, don't expect federal forces to treat you very kindly. Just saying, probably isn't going to work out for you. I know that's a very strange thing to say. So we're going to cut over to the commercial side of things over on the radio. We'll be back in just a minute for y'all with Kurt Schlichter. We'll be over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, unfortunately, over the weekend, there were a lot of media pundits and Sunday show goobers who were coming out with their best. One of these is Margaret Brennan. Margaret Brennan has consistently embarrassed herself in front of the administration more than any media host in history. It's really quite impressive. She's the host of CBS Face the Nation, and Sunday shows are like the podcasts of yesteryear. So you would bring on several different officials from the federal government, some leadership from Congress, maybe very rarely a CEO or like a key financial expert. And you would have podcasts like interviews, maybe a panel. And these would be the places that you would get the slower paced podcast style questions that you would see on Joe Rogan, for example, nowadays. So the Sunday shows people have stopped watching because almost all of them suck. But Margaret Brennan, she's still out there giving it her all. And it has essentially turned into a beautiful opportunity for self-humiliation. Margaret Brennan will invite on Scott Bessent, and he will beat her as though Kilmar Abrego Garcia is going home to see his wife. So in this particular instance, you have Margaret Brennan inviting on Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who then drops a Moab on her Fordo. And it's, well, Check it out.
Up on a phrase you just word, weaponization ambitions. Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is
everything
the
they need
key
to build a
point
weapon.
in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
The political decision had not
I know
been
that better
made.
than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium?
By the way, now you can see that Margaret Brennan has realized she has done goofed and is backpedaling like a terrified clown on a unicycle.
You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons. Because they can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No, but
so
that's a question. That's a question of intent, and you know, in the intelligence assessment.
A question of intent. Okay.
That it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold state and use this leverage.
Says?
I'm talking about
what the intelligence assessment.
So Rubio keeps hitting her, and you see this with all of these goofballs over on the media side who are saying, "Well, the intelligence report says this." Says the girl with her degree from Northwestern in journalism who knows nothing about intelligence reports or the standard 5-op order format for military orders. She knows nothing. And so Rubio's saying, okay, well, smart Alec, you tell me what the intelligence report says. And she can't say anything. And so she's essentially getting roasted alive in that pinstripe suit, almost as badly as Corinne Jean-Pierre when she wore her pinstripe suit.
March assessment, and that's why I was asking you if you know something more from March.
But that's also
if
an
an
inaccurate
order was
representation
given.
of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Now, forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program. So why would you enrich uranium at 60%?
Right.
If you don't intend to one day use it to take it to 90 and build a weapon?
Right.
Why are you developing ICBMs? Why do you have 8,000 short-range missiles and 2,000 to 3,000 long mid-range missiles that you continue to develop? Why do you do all these things? They have everything they need for a nuclear weapon.
Incredible stuff. We're going to head over to Kurt Schlichter from townhall.com, and we're going to get his take on all of this, but it's pretty good. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Alas, the intelligence have fooled us yet again. I was promised World War III. I was promised Forever War II, Electric Boogaloo. I was promised the supremacy of the Iranian Ayatollahs. And instead, all I got was a lot of pearl clutching and a couple of ballistics fired over at our empty base in Qatar. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Kurt Schlichter's here with us, author of Coming Out, American Apocalypse. We'll include the pre-order link down in the description. Kurt, how's it going, man?
Well, look, I got a bone to pick with you because all the hip kids are going for Iraq to the quickening.
The quickening? That sounds
Electric
really
Boogaloo,
gay.
Sure, but get like on the Highlander tiff. Look, with Trump, there can be only one. Actually, in Ferdo, there's 6. Booyah!
I gotta say, the straight down the ventilation shaft that they built a straight pipe for in Fordo, not, diagonally up through the rock, but just a chimney for the U.S. to drop down the bunker buster through is peak Arabic engineering, my man.
Well, I gotta say, Trump especially won the Bulwark guys over when he used a massive penetrator. So it's, that's how that goes.
Well, according to the Associated the Associated Press, they said that Iran says the missile barrage on Qatar was the same number of bombs used by the U.S. on its nuclear sites, signaling a likely desire to de-escalate. My, how symbolic we got real quick.
Oh, that's like saying the new kid on the cell block who comes with his own KY is de-escalating.
All right, so let's get past a lot of the what's going on right now. Of course, there are all of these security updates coming out. A lot of individuals who were calling anyone who disagreed with them a neocon or are suspiciously quiet at the moment. Right now, everyone with a couple of brain cells to rub together is asking the same thing. Do you think we're going to see the Abraham Accords out of this thing? And if so, about how long do you give it?
I think it's going to come very soon. You know, these third world types respect the strong horse. Sadly, first world types, it's the only thing that they're better at than us, because the first world types respect the weak horse, the lame horse, actually the donkey. But yeah, they're going to see, look, America's not screwing around and Trump will kill you. Let's get on his team. That's the way it's done in that world. If you know, it's a high stakes world over there, Tony. If you screw up and side with the wrong guy, they're going to kill you and everybody you ever met. So maybe, play the odds, go with the strong guy. It's not crazy. I mean, I get why they do it. And when they see that Trump is not trumping around, and I didn't think the Iranians would attack. So take it whatever it's worth. I don't think Trump's going to let this pass because he said, don't do it.
Right.
They did it.
We already have some of the
bitch school.
Some of the leaks. And I'm saying this, looking at this as we're sitting down talking about this, that various outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post are saying a senior official in the White House says that Trump plans no additional blah, 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 blah. How many times is the Trump administration going to feed them hot garbage like he did with this series of strikes? And they're just going to print it saying, oh, yeah, let's run the anonymous source for the 8th time.
You know, the only source they have that's not like planned is, the angry E4 that you send over to the S4 shop to get him the hell out of the way so no one kicks his ass and you don't have to write a report about it. That's the guy, the malcontent. There's no, I mean, he is so playing them, and Hegseth has shown, I mean, he canned a couple of his buddies. He said, you guys are talking out of school, you're out. And they were like, wait, what? I mean, I've heard they're good guys. I mean, I don't agree with what they have to say, but I've heard they're good guys. But Pete said, we're not playing this. And they managed to, it also helps when you don't tell the Democrats you're launching an attack.
That's true. I mean, I do enjoy the immediate pearl clutching that came out from all of the, the various Democrats inside the House caucuses who were upset that they weren't briefed until the B-2s left Iranian airspace. And we can talk about how likely it would have been.
Oh, we're doing OPSEC now. We're doing OPSEC now. I mean, just a month ago. Wait, I'm sorry.
You don't think that Rashida Tlaib would honor
doing OPSEC now? You don't think that's convenient for the message?
I'm just saying, you don't think a Rashida Tlaib or AOC, who was busy walking down the airport concourse yesterday with Mahmoud Khalil, is a reputable operational security congresswoman?
Well, look, I think I think you need to go short on AOC stock because, frankly, she's putting on pounds, and I think pretty soon there's just going to be a distinct lack of interest.
Well, speaking of a distinct lack of interest, Russia and China have, I know, again, not surprisingly to you and me, perhaps, and a lot of our audience, but surprising to a few, Russia and China have essentially just given Iran a high five after they claimed they were going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And China was like, yeah, okay, buddy. And Russia said the same. We'll help you diplomatically, but if you think you're closing the Strait of Hormuz, you're on meth.
Yeah. China, look, I think Chinese foreign policy is very, in some ways, very effective because they don't make other people's problems theirs.
No, but it is very selfish for that reason, though, right? Because if that's going to affect them negatively, they get real scared of it real quickly. It should
be selfish. The Chinese should look out for Chinese interests. I wish America would do that more.
Right, foreign policy should be selfish, but it's strange to see the kind of the populist isolationist crew, the horseshoe crew, it's been called, that are suggesting that the BRICS alliance, that the Brazil, the Russia, the China, the South Africa, whatever, was going to come fight the United States over this. And now here we are with Syria siding with the United States and Iraq and Saudi Arabia sort of crying some crocodile tears about it. Nobody's coming to Iran's aid here.
Look, when you're getting, your insights from, a stand-up comic who the closest he's been to the military was the Fayetteville Chuckle Works. I mean, you're going to get a retarded take. Mm-hmm. Look, and here's the thing. I wrote a column today, Monday, in Town Hall, where I said there are a lot of guys who disagree. I'm a Iran hawk. Okay, I was in junior high school when these semi-humans started hassling us, and we haven't killed them yet, and it's about a half century past time.
Right,
but I got a lot of friends who I respect and are intelligent people who have looked at all the evidence, come to a different conclusion. Significant among them are guys who were in the GWAT. Okay, I was in Kosovo while they were getting blown up by Iranian IEDs and Taliban BS. These guys are like, hey, I buried a lot of friends for nothing. All right, I don't trust the U.S. government to do this right. And I can't say that you're crazy or unreasonable. I can say I disagree in this particular case based on these facts. But, these guys deserve a respectful hearing. They deserve an answer. We can't just go, oh, well, you just hate the Jews. There are some guys who hate the Jews. All right. They're the guys who go,
there are some people who are skittish.
Whatever.
I mean, it's like after Vietnam, you had people who were suggesting that getting involved in American foreign intervention around the world was going to lead to another Vietnam. And that's understandable.
Yes.
But then I have to draw a line when I see people saying, like, the left compares everything to World War II and Hitler. And now we have a lot of individuals comparing everything to Iraq and Afghanistan.
People, especially guys who've been burned, and in some case, literally.
Correct.
They're going to use that as a template. And I'm not angry with them. I disagree. I'll argue with them, but I don't think they're bad people. And I think at the end, and they're always going to support our troops. Correct. That's the difference between the left. We talk about the horseshoe. When our guys go to the back, they're still like, I didn't think this is a great idea, but, God bless our troops. I want them to come home. And the left are kill the war criminals, building your tower of lies on the bones of indigenous peoples.
It's really, really bizarre. But also, I think that in this is my hot take analysis here. And you were paying attention at this time when I was, perhaps a touch young to do so here.
You're
I think that this argument closely resembles, I think the situation more closely resembles like Saddam's regime right before the Gulf War, rather than Iraq and Afghanistan, because Iran's had this very fragile boasting of troops and Air Force of F-14s, and it's just not turning out to be what they promised it was going to be.
No.
I don't know. Am I off skis there? This is closer to the Gulf than Iraq? Or
Well, look, I remember in the Gulf War, I was with 7 Corps, okay? We were designed to cut the guts out of the Warsaw Pact in southern Germany. And they picked us up. They moved us in the middle of the desert. And I got stuck at Corps Main headquarters. I was so far in the rear, you'd have to FedEx bullets to hit me. But I got to watch stuff, up close. I got to see, hear radio calls that I read about in history books. The thing is, every second of every day, we focused and trained as if we were going up against a Russian elite tank guards division. We weren't going, we're going up against the second stringers. I guess we can go out and get drunk tonight. It was 100%. We are going to fight the best soldiers mankind has ever put on the ground. We're not holding anything back. We're totally taking it. And that's, and obviously if you do that, you can have a success like we had in Desert Storm. So when our planners take Iranian capabilities and measure them at 100%, and then the Iranians come in, they've got 20 F-14s. Oh boy. Well, they have Phoenix missile systems, which will engage out to 600 miles, blah, blah, blah. And then you actually fight them and you realize, they've sold them for, magic beans. Half the planes don't fly. The other have been rented to Hollywood for Maverick 3. It is just, I understand why you fight the toughest enemy possible. And I think there may be some disconnect there when politicians start talking about that. But I want the military to be, there's no air defenses in Iran right now. We still sent in a wave of F-35s, F-15s. To plow the snow and make sure that anything that even looked remotely like a SAM site became a smoking ruin.
And you're right. And that's precisely my primary concern, because again, if we're talking about the AIM-54 Phoenix, which I think it's actually about 100 to 250 miles operation, not the AIM-54, but either way, I mean, regardless whether it's 250 or whether it's 600, if you don't make sure in advance that the skies are clear, you're always going to have someone looking over their shoulder, and people looking over their shoulder are usually bad at aiming at things on the ground at the same time. So I want to make sure that no matter what we're doing in the region, that we make sure, and this is one of the things I liked about Trump's move with Israel here, that the IDF and the IAF made sure there were no SAM sites active before the United States flew any kind of a sortie. And then we still used submarines to perform some of these strikes. I love the caution here, because these are real airmen whose lives are at risk.
Look, I mean, a
low risk maybe, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Look, our job is mission first, then take care of your people. Are we going to be able to accomplish the mission? Yes. All right, now let's do it where the fewest where we have the fewest funerals. And that's kind of the commitment we made to our guys. If we call on you to do something that gets you killed, okay, but you understand we're not going to call on that unless we've done everything possible to minimize it.
Right. Absolutely. Unfortunately, that has us knocking up against the edge of the FCC timer, but I can never help going over just a little bit. Kurt Schlichter, new book, American Apocalypse, the Second American Civil War, comes out the 17th. I'm pretty pumped about it. The link, of course, to pre-order is in the description. Don't miss this one, guys. He's a good author for a reason. I'm just going to say, we don't even talk about his books, and you want to go read them. So
there is a Tony Kinnett cameo.
At long last, my repeated pestering has paid off.
I think you're gonna enjoy it. I'm particularly proud of it. There's a lot of Easter eggs in these.
Oh, there are, and that's
you've got to make. I mean, it's not a fun subject, but you've got to make it so people are like, oh, well, I'm having a positive experience. You know,
I'm still trying to explain the Taylor Swift cameo from one of the first books that you did to producer Nick. It's a good one. So again, Kurt Schlichter, townhall.com. We'll of course link your column in the description below. Thanks again, man.
Thanks, man.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, just a quick thing here before we get to some of the other reaction stuff. If you or a loved one are turning 65 soon, you're going to want to hear how my partner chapter, Medicare, is saving people thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, being the government boondoggle that it is, and a required one at that, Medicare is a maze of misinformation to enroll. And the victims are everyday Americans, parents and grandparents, including those of Chapter's co-founders. That's why they vowed to go the extra mile to do right by their customers. Chapter's advisors listen carefully, they compare every plan, and help you maximize your savings. People are relieved when they talk to Chapter. It makes even a typically annoying process easy and fairly enjoyable. So working with Chapter is simple, helps save you a ton of money, and saves you days and days of research. Plus, these guys aren't going to push you to buy a plan that you don't want, and their support is completely free. So if you're turning 65 soon, call them up. You won't regret it. In fact, most people only regret not calling Chapter first. So call the number on the screen. That's 415-787-4074. Or visit askchapter.org/Tony. That's askchapter.org/Tony. Now, as I've already celebrated quite a bit, that I am in fact getting what I voted for yet again. I do have to bring up just a smidgen of criticism for some individuals over on the right side of the aisle. And I must say that when you sign some kind of weird agreement with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ro Khanna of California in order to push some sort of War Powers Act restriction that violates the U.S. Constitution pretty flagrantly, from Article 2, you're not really helping anybody out. Additionally, this is really the criticism of kind of some members of the right. You're just too online. You're just too online. Go touch grass. Go talk with Americans. Multiple polls that are coming out to this day show that the vast majority of Republicans, and I don't just mean like 54% to 46%, the vast majority of Republicans support the United States performing a targeted strike on Iran. Not big, huge regime change, which, again, the fear-mongering of was very short-lived. Not a massive boots-on-the-ground campaign, which nobody except Lindsey Graham, who no one listens to on foreign policy anyway, is rooting for. But the vast majority of Republicans were in favor of this. And so then all of the immediate panicking that came out from individuals like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, I got to tell you, consistently proving herself to be one of the least effective members of the House. And by the way, I think that she's got some really good things that she's done, especially regarding protecting women's sports, especially regarding the essentials of keeping certain campaign finance laws realistic. That's very good. In the foreign policy area, though, horrible. Making statements like, I don't even know any people who have been killed by Iran. 3 troops from Georgia were killed by a directly Iranian-backed militia in the last year. That's her state, Georgia. So maybe read a book. Don't insult. Again, you don't even have to make stupid foreign policy statements. You don't. There are subjects online that I don't talk about as a pundit because they're not my best subject. You're never going to hear about me discussing Middle African economics. You're never going to hear me talking about the cultural distinctions of Siberia. You're never going to hear me talking about the royal family of Luxembourg because they're not mine. They're not. My areas of knowledge include education policy, broad common sense media policy, a good smattering of foreign policy and history, the sciences, and being really depressed as an Indiana Pacers fan. Those are my areas of expertise. But Marjorie Taylor Greene gets out in front of the country and just, I don't know what in the world she's trying to do here other than go for attention. Here you go.
Tell you what, 6 months in, Steve, and here we are turning back on the campaign promises, and we bombed Iran on behalf of Israel. Yes, it was on behalf of Israel. We're entering a nuclear war, the World War III, because the entire world is going to erupt. And you want to know the people that are cheering it on right now? Their tune is going to drastically change the minute we start seeing flag-draped coffins on the nightly news, on Fox News that brainwashes all the baby boomers, and on CNN that brainwashes all the Democrat baby boomers. And that is exactly...
I'm sorry, I'm going to make this explicitly clear. Going after the boomers is a stupid thing to do. Because again, if you're looking at Republican constituencies, the individuals who are likely reading some of this and also lived through 1979 are, you guessed it, the baby boomers. Going after boomers is a very scurrilous thing. I know, I've criticized boomers before in regards to economic policy and apathy. If you're just going to say Fox News is catering to the baby boomers, honk honk, more from Jerry the Clown over here, MTG, claiming that World War III, well, where is it? Where is it? I was promised World War III, forever war, boots on the ground, boogaloo, extreme, whatever. It ain't here. You were wrong. As for campaign promises, Trump has been promising to take action against Iran if they get close to a nuclear weapon every single time he was asked about it on camera for the last 30 years. It is one of the only things Trump has been explicitly complicit on in regard to policy. And since we're here, I will remind every boy, girl, and squirrel that Marjorie Taylor Greene's foreign policy predictions have now come true a whopping 0 times that she's made them on air. 0 times. Essentially, Marjorie Taylor Greene on foreign policy is like Angel Reese on the basketball court. Depressing for everyone except those who are making fun of her. So, while I would love to join the everyone I don't like is a neocon nonsensical circus, perhaps, maybe you let the... all right, you know what? Just very quickly here, just for kicks and or giggles, I'm going to point out some of the things that totally should have caused ultra super duper extreme war between the United States and Iran. Trump moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I was told that would bring war. Nope. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was eliminated. No war. Qasem Soleimani was eliminated. No war. The Iranian nuclear weapons program was eliminated. No war. By the way, now we're getting ready for a ceasefire after Iran fired 6 very limp-wristed ballistic rockets at the Qatari U.S. base after Qatar and most likely Iran, according to at least Reuters, I believe, has confirmed that Iran even warned the United States these rockets were coming because Iran doesn't want to start none. So, what have we learned today, boys and girls? Well, perhaps that it's time to put the phone down and go outside and touch some grass. Because, as I said yesterday, when I encouraged everyone to go to church and talk with some real Americans and not just whatever some Pakistani bot is boosting on X. And by the way, there are a record number of MAGA accounts on Twitter that are not MAGA, that are not Americans, that are in favor of the President Trump, that have been exposed as Pakistani, Afghani, Turkmenistani accounts, which have IP addresses from those regions, owned by the great Americans like Abdul Mahad Vakhin. Ah, yes, one of the founding fathers. I just don't... Every time we go through this, there's a lot of panicking and no, and then we're right back at the end of the Trump cycle. And then the goals move. So with that said, enough of that particular soapbox. I'm sure that by tomorrow we'll have, I don't know, some kind of a fist fight on the floor of the House and some stupid thing going on at a university. And I mean, given that drag queens are now being put on as faux meteorologists, yeah, we'll get to that. It's a wild time to be in particular news cycles and politics. So have a wonderful evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Same great time, same great place. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.